I want to start with kind of a little joke. I have a book at home called Stuff Christians Like, and it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek. It makes fun of our side hug and some of the things that we like to do. So this is about prayer. There's a stand-up rule for prayer. This is supposed to be funny. Because I know pray without ceasing and be thankful for everything. I know that. The stand-up rule. If you have to stand while eating, you don't have to pray. Regardless of what you're eating, standing makes the food seem light and insignificant. To make it easy to remember, if you have to stand, God won't demand a prayer tonight, just take a bite. And this is the drive-in rule. Ever thought about whether you have to pray when you pick up drive-in food or not? This actually depends on which fast food restaurant you go to. If you go to Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out, you probably don't have to pray because those are Christian restaurants. And holiness is pre-applied like barbecue sauce on all the food. You're covered. Taco Bell, Burger King, and other restaurants are questionable. At the bare minimum, turn your back in the car while they use that bean and guacamole gun at Taco Bell. You're probably going to need to pray for that. I like that. The good hand of God. We are on page 59 in our book. I'll need my little clicker. I want to talk about hands for just a second. There's not very many slides, 6 for the whole hour. So, the other day when I was working out, a woman much younger than I said, "Oh, I just love your hands." And I thought, what? And she said, "They remind me of my mother-in-law's hands, and I just like to look at them and imagine all the things she's done in her life with her hands, caring for babies, preparing food, cleaning the house." And that got me thinking, because we're talking about the hand of God, it got me thinking about, I can recall, they're both long gone, but both my grandmother's hands, exactly what they looked like. One was wrinkled and freckled like mine, and I remember seeing it in the casket. And, you know, it just, and then my other grandmother had rheumatoid arthritis, and her hands were deformed, but very smooth because she couldn't work for the last 30 years of her life. And if you think about it, I know exactly what my husband's hands look like. I know exactly what my daughter's hands look like. It's a very important part of the created body, and I just love to think about it that way. I believe that our hands are created in God's image, if not in form, in function. And last week we talked about the hand of God is there to care for, protect. When they use the metaphor, the hand of God, care for, protect, and action. So our hands are also to care for, protect, and act on God's behalf. Okay, Nehemiah's story so far. I don't know if anybody needs to catch up, but Nehemiah is a cupbearer to King Artaxerxes in not Paris, but Persia. He received a report from Jerusalem that the walls around the city were broken down and the people were in danger. This news breaks Nehemiah's heart, and he prays and fasts for 4 days. Then he gets an opportunity to present the king with a plan to go back and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. King Artaxerxes agrees and sends Nehemiah to Jerusalem with supplies for rebuilding, with protection in the form of horses and guards and letters for safe passage all the way to Jerusalem. Now we're at the point where Nehemiah went out last week and surveyed the damage of the walls privately. And today we learned how he moved the people to rebuild the city walls. Imagine with me for a minute, what if he had ignored that report? What if he didn't allow his heart to break over those broken walls? Would the good hand of God been removed from Nehemiah? I believe that God's purposes would have been accomplished. His purposes are always accomplished. It might have been someone else. It might have taken longer. Nehemiah was prepared for this moment, and he would have missed the blessing if he had ignored it and not been broken in the heart. Wouldn't it have been easier for Nehemiah to say, I'm a leader, I'll send someone else. I'll make a great monetary contribution toward this cause because I believe in it, but I'm needed here. I'm going to stay here. The king needs me. Send someone else. Didn't Moses say that? Send someone else, Lord. But praise God that Nehemiah said, I'll do it. My heart is broken, just like God's heart is broken. And remember, in our book on page 48, there's a prayer by Bob Pierce. It's very short. It says, let my heart be broken with the things that break the heart of God. So I think that's a very important part of Nehemiah. Okay, page 59. Moving the people. Let's see. Did I? I don't think I did. I think the next one is. We lived in Scotland, my family and I. My husband was transferred there for 3 years. And the book talks about William Wallace, who was a Scottish warrior. Okay, this was very near to where we lived. This is the Wallace Monument. And it's, I don't know, 400 and something steps. You can't imagine how many visitors from America I took up those steps and back down again. Because it was within 4 or 5 miles of our house. Beautiful place. William Wallace was in 1297 AD. He was when this leader was. And there's gorgeous statues of men in the proper period armor and everything in the site. But what did Americans export to the William Wallace Monument? At the base, that's Mel Gibson. And his most unlovely moment in that movie, it's just ironic. But evidently, William Wallace was a great leader, and he was successful, but in the end, the English beat the Scots, and they are still angry with them. I think inspiring and testifying is what Nehemiah did to move the people. Let's read together the prayer on page, the top of page 60. Top of page 60. I want to read this prayer together. Dear Lord, sometimes I am not prepared to deal with evil because I don't recognize the enemy. You have told us that we are not wrestling with flesh and blood, but with powers, rulers of darkness, and hosts of wickedness. Guide me through those sources with your strong hand. In Jesus' name, amen. So these enemies of Nehemiah, I don't even say their names because I don't like that bad people get their names in history. So I don't even, but these guys, now we have 3 of them in this section, were motivated by Satan. And all of our enemies are motivated by Satan, or they've been somehow motivated by Satan to do evil. And so if we can put, I mentioned my own enemy in this world last week. I was able early on to put the face of Satan on my daughter's abuser because it helped me not hate him. It helped me pray for him, and that's just a personal thing that I believe. Okay, on page 60, I want to read a little bit in that second paragraph under look at. We see that Nehemiah revealed his plan to the people who not only would benefit the most from its accomplishment, but would also have to participate in its execution. Once again, Nehemiah was prepared. He informed everyone involved at the same time. So notice there are no insiders. Nobody has the inside scoop on what Nehemiah is going to try to tell us he's here for. He showed them the need and led them to the solution. He appealed to their sense of national pride and assured them that they would be a part of a godly work. So Nehemiah 2, 16 through 18. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I had done. This is after he'd gone out to inspect the walls at night. I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, or the others who did the work. Then I said to them, "You see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire. Come and let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach." And I told them of the hand of my God, which had been good upon me, and also of the king's words that he had spoken to me. So they said, "Let us rise up and build." Then they set their hand to this good work. It's very inspiring. Inspiring speech, inspiring response.
Kathy, backing up just a little bit, when it was talking about that, he gathered them all together and told them, well, at one time, gave them all the instructions and everything that had been done, so there was no question in anybody's mind of what had been done. So many times when we delegate things out to other people, we lose something in translation. You know, the game that we used to play where you do the whisper thing and you go down a line, and by the time that you get to the end, the first of it has nothing to remind you of nothing. And I see his wisdom and his leadership in making sure that everybody heard it at the same time, and there's no question about what he said or what he didn't do. So I think that's a good point for us to remember too.
Yeah, I think it's a good leadership role model. Let's see. On the next page, 61 in the margins, the small print, number 4. I think this is an important part. Another mark of Nehemiah's spiritual maturity was personally identifying with the people. He used the words "we" and "us" instead of "you" and "them." When we were in Pennsylvania, we had an elder who was preaching for a few years because we didn't have a preacher, and he was a wonderful speaker. He would study so hard. Both of my daughters were preteens and teens, and they would not listen to him. I could tell they weren't listening because he used the word "you" in all his sermons. It was you and you and you and you, and neither we and us. And it's just those tiny words that can really change the hearer's position. It's we are together. And I love him. I still love him. He's a great man. He was a great elder. It was just that one choice that I felt like hurt my children and probably hurt others. From that, I always try to say, I try to be open with my own weaknesses and try to say we and us. And I would encourage you to do the same. I think, too, it opens us up when we say you to being judged as a hypocrite. And then in number 5, down below that, this is a wonderful scripture. I'll write it out. Ecclesiastes 9:1. Is that? Yes. But all this I laid to heart, examining it all, how the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of God. It says he is in control. So that's where we want to be. Like Nehemiah, we want or works to be in the hand of God? So in response to this question about, is my heart broken for the things that break the heart of God? Am I following His purpose for my life? Are you ready, Marilyn? Rather than tell more Kathy stories, I want to share Marilyn Woolley. Is the person that inspires me. I want to share her story with World Bible School. So Marilyn, can you come up here and I will ask you the questions we talked about yesterday.
You don't have to look very far from my weakness
You
because
want
my
to
heart
stand or
is.
sit? Here.
I'll just sit, so I won't fall down. Can I just hold it?
Okay, Marilyn. How and when did you get involved with World Bible School?
Well, I got involved in World Bible School. My very dear, dear friend of 65 plus years
Closer to your
in junior
mouth,
high.
baby.
Huh?
Closer to your mouth, baby.
Okay. She was my junior high and high school. We played ball together, and she was married to Jimmy's best friend from the 4th grade, and they were the ones that got Jimmy and me together. And so she has been involved in World Bible School for about 50 years. It's been a passion with hers, and we went over to Abilene. They lived in Abilene, and we went over there one day, and the guys went off and played golf, and I just sat at Paula's feet for about 3 hours of her telling me about World Bible School, and her stories were so incredible. Her love was Zimbabwe, and where's Sokantela?
Sokantela is in Zambia.
Zambia,
It's right above
yes.
Zimbabwe.
Yeah, those two, and she went there several times and even got to witness her students being baptized, which was just be a dream of mine. But anyway, when we got through talking, I told her, I said, I'm going to go to South Main and I'm going to start the World Bible School ministry. And I didn't know we had one. And I knew Ruth Jones had it, but she had since moved away to be with her children. And so I came to and mentioned that one day to somebody, I don't even remember who, and they said, well, I think Larry Royal does the World Bible School. I said, oh, great. So I go to Larry and I asked him if he would like some help with World Bible School, and he said, oh, yeah, that'd be great. So in the early stages of our Mugs and Muffins every fall, I had Paula as a guest speaker speaking on all of her things with World Bible School, and she just had some incredible stories. And so after that, there was about 6 ladies that wanted to help with World Bible School, so that's how we kind of got his. But Larry is such a wonderful coordinator, and he makes it so easy for all of us. But the first, am I talking too much? Okay. The first, so he calls Cedar Park. Cedar Park is our corporate office up near Austin. And so he called Cedar Park and said, send me some names, because all the names requesting the World Bible School lessons come to Cedar Park. So they sent us, there was 30 names from a Nigerian preacher, and for us to grade and send back. And on that sheet of paper was his email address. So I emailed him, and that got a relationship going with Joseph. And it was just incredible. And in a school there, they were able to go into the schools and teach the Bible. And this headmaster of this private school had asked him if he would teach the Bible lessons. So in Nigeria, nearly all of their teaching of the Bible is through the World Bible School lessons. And so that's how it kind of got started. One of my students that I chose was an incredible Bible student. And I noticed on his student information that he was a Pentecostal preacher. And Joseph had a tiny little church that he was getting started and so forth, and I told Joseph, I said, study with Kenneth and convert him. He would be such an asset to your little church. And so he did, and he baptized Kenneth and his wife. And they were such an example of persecution because their church and his family withdrew from him. And so I told Joseph, I said, there was a school of preaching right there in Avia State. And I said, get him, if you possibly can, into that school. And he would just be a wonderful student. And so he said, Kenneth is so poor, he could hardly feed his family. He had 5 children. And but he did. He got him in school, and usually you study for 2 years and then you're out on your own, you know, building churches and so forth. Kenneth went 3 years. And through that, my Sunday school class, we started taking up a little, just pass a basket every week, and they just put some money in there, and we started supporting Kenneth. Quarterly, we would send that money to him. And because he had this little broken down motorcycle going to school every day, and then it broke down, and he was having to take public transportation, which nearly just devastated him. And so I went before the elders. This is a lot of we went before the elders.
It's your story.
You talk about nervous. Meeting with all those men staring at me, and I was the only woman in there. But I made the plea to get Kenneth a motorcycle, and they agreed right then that they would send the money and get him a motorcycle. And he got out, started his little church, and he's still going. And that's how I got to know Chenadum. If you were here week before last, Chenadum was on the overhead and thanking us for the money that we have sent him to curb the hunger and the starvation there in Nigeria. And through Joseph, I got to know Chenadum and just have struck up such a relationship with him and with Jimmy too. He loved Jimmy and so forth. And as you know, he named a orphanage. They had just started an orphanage, and they had called it Motherless Babies Home. And he wrote me an email one day, and he said, I'm trying to get it approved that it would be Jimmy Woolley's Motherless Babies Home. And that was approved. And that morning in church, I did not know, it was Joe Brown had emailed me that he was going to say that, but I didn't get the email. So that was a total surprise. But anyway, my daughter made blew up a picture of Jimmy holding our great-grandson, and they are just beaming, you know. And she had that framed, and I'm sending that to Chenadum to be hung in the Motherless Babies Home. But yeah, it really was.
Marilyn, tell us why, because I did a couple of months of, and I don't remember what life interruption happened. I did a couple of months of World Bible School with Larry, and like she said, he's very well organized. He does make it so easy.
Yes.
So easy that I couldn't understand how Marilyn got these relationships with these people going. I was just grading tests. So tell us about how you went beyond.
My favorite World Bible School connection is with the prison in Mineral Wells. That was the most rewarding thing because they were so responsive. You know, all they had to do all day long is do the World Bible School lessons, and the guys go over there and preach on Sunday and Wednesday night and hand out these lessons, and then they bring the lessons to us in the class, and we grade them and then send them back with the next lesson. And I mean, by the next time the guys went, here were these lessons, you know. And sometimes, like sending them to Nigeria, we don't get them back for 6 months. And It would, what'd you ask?
Tell me about, you would add things to it, you would develop these
yeah.
relationships.
When I get a name requesting the World Bible School lessons, I have a little form letter that I send them, telling them how wonderful it is that they have agreed to do the World Bible School lessons. And I tell a little bit about myself, that I've been married for 60 years, I have 7 grandchildren, because especially in the prisons, I want them to know that I'm a dried up, skinny little grandmother. And then when I grade their lesson on a subject, if I have a track or a devotional, I send that to them, and I tell them, I said, I have just worlds of these. If you would like to have them, I would be glad to send them to you. And then in their lessons, I put a blank sheet of paper, and probably 95% of the time, they will write me a letter back. And that just gets everything going. And they tell me, yes, please send me some devotionals and da-da-da-da-da. And one student even wanted me to write a letter to his probation officer. And he was an excellent World Bible School student. So I did, and he was paroled. So whether it was because of that or not. Yeah, but I have so many stories that, you know, just like Paula, and one of them, one of my students from Nigeria was a witchcraft person. He witched people, he thought. And he wrote me a long letter, and he said, I don't want to do that anymore. I've asked God to forgive me. Please ask Joseph to forgive me. He's not forgiven me. And so I write a letter to Joseph and, you know, give him all the scriptures on we have to forgive so God can forgive us and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, study with, his name was Banker Joe. They had really weird names over there because he worked in a bank. And I said, study with Banker Joe and convert him. And he did, and he converted him. And I have a picture of him. Joseph made Banker Joe bring all of his witchcraft stuff to the church and burned it before everybody. And I just have the sweetest stories like that. It's just incredible. And two, this is what keeps me going. This is just one drawer of letters, and I call them my love letters from my World Bible School students. And they're just incredible. This Keith Calloway, he had been released from prison about 3 years, and it was about Christmas time, and I get this email from him, and he has remained faithful, and he tells me, you know, what all he's done, and he started a blog on the internet and blogs every week and kind of teaches the Bible on that. So I pulled it up, and really he had a wonderful blog, and it's just these letters that just keep me going.
Now you know why she inspires me. Something that I don't know if you were able to understand, Chinadum, that speaker in the auditorium. It was really hard to hear, but in Nigeria, during COVID and drought or whatever in 2020, the government did not put Church of Christ in their list of people to send food to. They don't belong to the Christian organization, Nigerian Christian organization or something like that. So that's why all the churches in that state needed food, because the government wasn't helping them. So we as a congregation stepped up, and the numbers are phenomenal, how many people they were able to feed, and with the generous contributions from this congregation. So, but thank you, Marilyn. That's a much better testimony than I can give. So I just want to kind of summarize. God allows Marilyn to teach the gospel. She said she always wanted to teach the gospel, but she didn't know how. God used that desire. She said yes, just like Nehemiah said yes. Marilyn's heart was broken for the lost and for the seeking. And because of Marilyn, we were able to help thousands and thousands of Christians this year in Nigeria. So one small step for a woman.
Amen.
Page 62 in the margin.
Kathy, let me
Mhm.
say one thing. I am now teaching the World Bible School online, which is very easy. It has a student board. You click on the students that you want, and you send them the lesson in it. It's just
So
very,
you can
very
do it from the
easy.
comfort
If
of your home.
anybody would like to do that,
Okay.
oh my goodness, it's so rewarding.
So she now does it at home online. Because they've streamlined all of because the mailings would just take forever. So this is really a good thing of the modern age. So if you want to join Marilyn, she will show you how. I've always loved this scripture in the margins of, it's Ephesians 2:10 in the margins on number 9 on page 62. God has given us clear priorities. First is our relationship with Him, then our families, and finally our work in or outside the home. In the midst of these responsibilities, He invites us to participate in good works which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And then down below at the bottom of that number 10, Psalms 138:8 says, the Lord will work out His plans for my life. For your faithful love, O Lord, endures forever. Don't abandon me, for you made me. Let Him work out His plans for you. Sometimes, the last sentence in that day says, sometimes it takes one person to lead the charge so others can be inspired to follow. Okay, we're going to move into day 5. I didn't really like the title of this day. I don't know where she got the ignored by enemies. I think he was despised by his enemies. Does anyone else have an insight to that? So I started this day with Matthew 5:10, 11, and 12. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. To be honest, this idea of having enemies is a difficult thing for me. And I tried to analyze it. I tried to write one of the prayers. And I realized that it's probably because I'm a people pleaser and I tend not to maybe step out, so that there are people that, I've had people not include me, but that's not an enemy. Like, they don't include me because I'm not going to party with them or where do you go every Wednesday night? That kind of question. But I don't consider that persecution. So I'm being a little inadequate at this point with this subject. But this opening section about bullying hits my heart about abuse. Abuse is bullying. Verbal, social, physical bullying or abuse. In our curriculum in Mending the Soul, we start out with the idea that there's abuse with a capital A that's illegal. Physical abuse is pretty much illegal. But there's a whole umbrella of abuse with a lowercase a that has the very same long-term effects that's not illegal. You can't really prosecute a husband who verbally and emotionally abuses his wife. But it's the same, if not worse, the same long-term effects that need the mighty hand of God to restore that person, that victim. It needs the hand of God to heal them. So never let anyone tell you that abuse with a small letter that's not illegal is not abuse, because it is. And bullying is the same thing. Ruby?
Excuse me, could we go back to the ignored?
Mm-hmm. Ignored versus.
I saw when he walks around the walls, there's not a guard posted at all. They had been beaten down to where the enemy didn't consider them worth attacking.
Okay. That's a good
Oh,
point.
now, they didn't start out that way. They started out with bullying, with being beaten down to the point where they weren't even considered, they didn't know who they were
Okay.
anymore.
That's a good point. Okay, so she says that the exiles that were now living in Jerusalem started out being bullied, pillaged, treated really badly by these enemies, and they beat them down long enough that now they're just ignoring them because they're not a worthy opponent to be
Exactly.
aggressive with. So I like that. That's a good point. In the last sentence on that page, it says, Nehemiah appealed to the absolute highest authority available, the God of heaven himself. On page 64. In our study today, we find that Nehemiah dealt with naysayers, bullies, and outsiders. They mocked his mission and hinted at the danger of his bold initiative. Nehemiah's clear determination and confidence in the King of Kings is evident. He rose up with the shield of righteousness to fend off the darts of doubt. Nehemiah 2:19-20. But when, here we go with the names, Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard of it, they laughed at us and despised us and said, "What is this thing you are doing? Will you rebel against the king?" So I answered them and said to them, "The God of heaven himself will prosper us. Therefore we his servants will arise and build. But you have no heritage or right or memorial in Jerusalem." I read some commentators that said that Nehemiah didn't have God's permission to say that. I think Nehemiah, he's obviously operating under God's direction. I think he did have permission to say, "You're not part of us. You will not inherit what God has in store for his people." So I'm going to rush through this because I want y'all to have plenty of discussion time today. On page 65, the question 8 asks us to reword that psalm into a personal prayer about those who laugh at you, and that's where I kind of had this breakdown of, "I know I'm an enemy, God." So this is the prayer I wrote. "God, your name is my strong tower. You have said that the righteous can run into it and be safe. Please send your spirit of holiness into my thoughts when I am weak to do acts of or say words of righteousness. Interrupt my people-pleasing tendencies with a desire to serve you, to claim you as a sovereign God of the universe." Please. Okay, on page 66, I just really like the way she finished off this section, so I'm just going to read it to you. Nehemiah did not let bullies stop the work he was called to do. Teddy Roosevelt said, "Do what you can with what you have where you are." Nehemiah was a man overcome with grief by the condition of God's holy city, so he did what he could. He prayed and waited. He used what he had, the power of prayer and a position of influence. He went to work where he was, in the throne room of a king. Then he willingly journeyed to a distant land to begin a new work there. Because of Nehemiah's willingness to be used, God touched the heart of the most powerful man on earth to support Nehemiah's plan and provide safe passage and ample supplies for the construction project. God used Nehemiah to move the hearts of the people, to restore the walls and the reputation of his holy city and people. Nehemiah boldly stood against the enemies of God's chosen people through prayer, obedience, and submission to God. Do what we can, use what we have, and work where we are. Okay, this is our time for discussion. We have a good 10, 12, 15 minutes. So it's okay to talk over questions that you might have filled out in your book or that I didn't type up for us, but please.
Kayla. Billy? Oh,